today we have Joe. By the way, my name is Ravi Kurani. I'm the CEO and founder of Sutro, and we're doing a little series called the Sutro Member Spotlight for some of our amazing customers that are out there. Joe, actually, the first question that I have is kind of, what's your background? What's your name? Where do you live? And what do you do?
So I'm not a pool boy, but I do love my pool. So Joe Megibow. I currently run a wine subscription company. We produce interesting wine that we source from all over the world, and similar to you in a way, we're a very data-driven company. We figure out consumers' taste profiles through a novel set of questions that we've invented, and then do data analysis on the wine and your review of the wine, and we match pretty amazing wines to pretty amazing people. So demystify an industry that has really become overly complicated and a little bit snobbish. So when you're sitting by your pool that is perfectly balanced and enjoying a nice spring or summer afternoon, you can have wine that you know you'll love too.
That's awesome. I think we should do like a Sutro and a wine partnership or something.
Amen.
Cool. I wanted to keep this relatively conversational, but we were chatting before I turned the recording on kind of why you ended up purchasing Sutro, right? What was your journey in making that purchase? What were you looking for? How'd you get to us?
Yeah, I like many pool owners, I got into it through the purchase of a house that had a pool, and went through the crash course of learning what all these pipes and switches and capabilities were, which fortunately my background happens to be engineering, so I attacked it like a system. But it's not just me, and educating my wife and kids and what you can and can't do and the capabilities. At some point, we remodeled the pool and did it kind of our way and took control. Like many also, the pool water and managing it and all the chemicals was a bit of a mystery to me. And the simplest thing you do is hire the local pool company who came once a week and treated it. And it was expensive, and I wasn't entirely sure what they did. It felt like they were kind of phoning it in. I did a little digging, and my wife, I think, actually found a great, really user-driven website called Trouble-Free Pools, and we started poking around, and I found a test that Taylor happens to make, and I started measuring it myself, and I was like, once I kind of figured it out, I like, this is not that hard. And the number of chemicals I really needed to manage were not that many. And very quickly, we said, this is not only way less expensive than hiring a guy to come out once a week, but I realized as I started testing that our water wasn't very good. And I think, like many pool owners, I suddenly came with the desire to have perfect pool water and started managing it myself. That said, it's still on me to keep testing, and like many, I found that you get busy over the weekend. I got kids and sports and family and travel, and inevitably the pool water would go awry, and I was trying to figure out there has to be a way to let me know when something's gone wrong, alert me to that. And given our today of Internet of Things and monitors and systems, I started looking around. I didn't start with Sutro. I started with another product that's out there, slightly different tech and slightly fewer areas of measurement. But it worked well enough that I realized, okay, this is the wave of the future. This is what should happen. But I saw Sutro come along. I liked the backstory and on your roots, and I liked that it was a more accurate form of testing and tested additional metrics like alkalinity that the prior system I had didn't. So I gave it a whirl, and I've been using it for goodness 5 or 6 months now.
Awesome. In your kind of usage of the Sutro product, I wanted to have also a kind of an honest conversation, as we are a startup, and I wanted to hear kind of what's been the good, the bad, the ugly, and what's working, what's not, what can we do to make the product better too, because I think for all the people out there, hearing your feedback, and then obviously we're going to take that and then implement it, as we have a few other things that you've suggested. I think it'd be really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it's well, first of all, there are startups that care about their customers and startups that don't. And I was fortunate in that early on. I reached out to you. I've reached out to other employees, and in general got uh, very earnest, attentive feedback on, hey, we're really trying to get this right. Anytime you're getting into something that's an emerging space, an emerging technology, you kind of have to go into it knowing there's going to be some hiccups and opportunity for growth. But what I saw early, I liked with Sutro is it seemed like a company that was genuinely trying to get it right. And then it's going along for the ride. And there are many, whether it's Wi-Fi or thermometers or other things. I mean, it's just been interesting to see how some of these products have really evolved from being an early adopter product to something more mainstream. And I certainly think there's opportunity for that to happen here. Yeah, early on though, I mean, there were things about the product that, I mean, there's where do you put the devices and how do you get them set up? And I mean, something that I think I'd emailed over on is the best place to but your device communicates to a device in your home that's on the internet. And for me, the most logical place to put it would have been to just mount it on a wall behind a TV that backs to and there's no way to mount it to a wall. So, I mean, there were little design things like that it's like over time, I expect will evolve, but you just kind of figure it out. The app itself, I mean, one of the things that early on I noticed is, this seemed to be a company that put a very high premium on industrial design, and at the core, the mechanical capability of doing these chemical measurements, which is what you really want. You want to know get this right. The app needed some work, though. It was almost like, this is a lab and chemistry company with a good dose of industrial design that really was kind of new to the notion of webs and apps. And it felt it in the beginning. And, whether it was just simple usability things that were just far more outright data visualization problems, where early on there were things that were just clearly data wrong. And that's the tricky part. Anything that's data wrong reduces confidence and trust. And on a system like this, if you don't have confidence and trust, you're not going to retain the customer, either as a subscriber or long-term on are they a user of the product. And we ran into some of those, which, you're aware of. I submitted bugs and things. What's great is over the last 6 months to see that continue to get better and better and improve. But ideally, and we were talking about this earlier, what I want is that I have enough confidence and trust in the system that really at the end of the day, it's about the alerts. So on those moments, on those times that I get busy and I forget to check the pool or I forget to think about it, that I don't have to remember to open the app and look. I get an alert that says, hey, your pool needs some love right now. And I have the confidence or trust that, this thing's got my back. And when I see that alert, I got to go do something. And I avoid having to do the whole algae bloom cleanup that no one wants to deal with. That's the ideal. That's what you want, that it's monitoring it. It's keeping you aware. You have trust in the system, and, it's close. You're getting there a little better every month.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, and your feedback has been really, really helpful over the last few months. So thank you, and keep it definitely coming. Another question actually I just thought of was, before you had Sutro, is there anything that you would tell new pool owners on like tips and tricks that you learned, or even while you're using Sutro? What's like 1 or 2 bullet points that you would tell somebody that just walked into a home with a swimming pool?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it's kind of like parenting, it's before someone has kids, you tell them how great it is. And then after they have kids, you commiserate with how much work and how frustrating it can be at times. So, I mean, there's a little of that with pool owners too. Sure, you got to get a pool. They're great. We use it all the time. Oh yeah, there's all these challenges and work. But honestly, as I've had other friends who bought homes with pools and they're trying I've encouraged them to take ownership of it. It isn't I mean, it's just hard to get into. It's hard to learn. And whether it's finding the websites and the guides, mostly, and I think this is an opportunity for you guys, mostly what you need is just somebody who really dumbs it down to the few basic things you need to know. It's not that complicated. It's just, unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of like before all the nice streaming systems in your home, you had like 8 devices in your family room for your DVD and your VCR and the cable and the antenna and this, and just even figuring out how to change an input or the blinking clock because no one knew how to set the clock. It was just complicated. And you had to hire some audiovisual expert to come in to set it all up, and you just prayed it didn't break. I mean, pools have sort of that same persona, but the reality is it's not that complicated. It's just finding someone to let you know what are the 2 or 3 things you really need to focus on. How do you manage it? You can take control of this yourself, which gives you trust and confidence. And I mean, it's a large body of water. You want to keep healthy and have your friends and children and so forth enjoy it. And just getting that crash course and the confidence to not just have to hire your way out and hope you get the right thing. I think there are a lot of people who want to take ownership. It's their house. Help. That's been the biggest thing for me. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of reading, trying to figure out some things that frankly weren't that complicated. And there's a lot of religious, I call it pool-like religious zealots who have deep-rooted belief on what's right and what's wrong. And there's a lot of passion in the space and filtering through the noise, not to mention vendors out there who want you to get really freaked out and scared about things that are either derivative problems to other things that if you keep take of you'll never matter, or just frankly are just scare tactics to get you to buy a product you don't need. It's not anywhere near as complicated as most people think it is.
I kind of like that. Maybe we should, in the future, we should build like a A to Z or a 1, 2, 3 of pool maintenance and just keep it in like the help section or the support section of the app.
There's something about got a new pool. The first thing you can do is buy Sutro. If you could get to that and it helps onboard a new pool owner, would be amazing. Yeah, that's certainly something to aspire to.
Cool. If you kind of went a little bit into this, if you could have like 1 or 2 features that you would want us to build in the next, year or so, well, if you had like a magic wand, what would you have us build?
It's a few things. I mean, honestly, and this is true of any consumer product, it's just getting it to get more aligned with the way consumers behave, my consumer journey. You've got some machine learning magic going on in the background. I do things to the pool. There's one nice thing about your solution is you're doing 3 tests a day, which means you're trying really hard. And there's a whole lot of reasons, from temperature fluctuations to water moving around the pool to foreign things in the pool to even just, any given test has a margin of error. By doing more tests, you have more ability to average across them and figure out what a fair rating is. What it can account for is my regular maintenance when I'm doing things, being able to say, I just added a chemical, or being able to say, I had 20 people swimming in the pool today, or it rained last night, or anything that helps your model understand, a good signal to noise ratio. Those are the kinds of things I'm probably willing to track anyway. And, if I add some chemicals, when did I last add that? And, knowing, and then similarly, I still do spot tests with, I use a Taylor test kit that's, done right, is pretty accurate. And, when, I go to the pool store and they run, they may oversell how accurate their testing is, but at least they know what they're doing in the testing. If I have some reference point that's different than what the app's telling me, I'd like to be able to either recalibrate or just tell it, hey, right now, I'm pretty sure this is it. Use that as the baseline and go from there, just to get all my view of the data and your view of the data all in sync. The key being that if you're telling me directionally it's gone too high or too low, that I know that it's to a reference that I would agree with. But these are the things I'm going to do with or without your product. And it's just, how do you get the product more aligned where I can signal to it, I've done something, something's happened, and that becomes part of your recommendation engine.
Yeah, awesome. And I think I was telling you a little about this earlier, our manual test functionality that we launched, where we can bring in, your manual test of your pH, your free chlorine alkalinity, the cyanuric acid, the calcium hardness, even the other variables we don't mention or measure. We would love to kind of marry all that together. And, the CYA could affect your pH or your chlorine load if you get CYA lock in 2 or 3 weeks, right? If we see that increasing over time. And so we may not measure that, but we want to build models and give the customer agency to then make decisions on kind of what's happening with their water and what they should or shouldn't be doing.
No, I agree. I just said it's not that complicated, and you just scared the hell out of me. And this is part of the problem. You've got all these chemicals that, until you understand what they are and the context and which are really primary and secondary factors, it just sounds like a whole lot of stuff that my eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
But you learn it over time. I mean, this is the stuff that, again, it's a finite number of things, and they're very predictable in nature, and it's just learning it. So, but yeah, that's exactly right.
Entirely. Cool. Well, I know you have to run very soon, but I wanted to, before we take off, wanted to just get your final favorite book or book that you're reading right now.
Oh, goodness. I think you might have told me that you were doing this, and I hadn't put any thought into it. There's actually, just with my business, some really interesting wine books I'm reading right now. I'm going to recommend, I wouldn't call it a favorite book, but a book that I think is really impactful. I'm going to plug a friend of mine. There's a friend of mine just recently published a book called Never Search Alone, that this is just timely. He started authoring this, I think, goodness, probably about a year ago, so long before all the current change in the economy and change in a lot of employment status of a lot of people, especially in our world of consumer facing businesses or tech. But it's a really cool book about, that job searches, whether you're doing a job change by choice or an involuntary job search, should not be done alone. It's not a solo thing, and creating a support group and a support network around you to help and manage. And we all have friends and mentors, and learning how to tap into that in a positive, constructive way. Really, really fascinating book that I read, and I was just thankful to see something like this published. And obviously, with what's been happening lately, it couldn't have been released at a better time. So I actually, for me, it had some frameworks. I went through the whole book on writing down and then sharing with others what you want for yourself professionally. And it is so instructive to write it down on paper and make it real. It's not an abstract concept, to write it down and give it to someone and have them say, yeah, that's not you, or you're not being specific enough. That could be anybody. So even if you're in a role, going through some of these exercises to kind of begin to figure out what makes you happy, and it professionally was a great exercise. So anyway, I'm plugging a friend of mine's book, Never Search Alone, written by a guy named Phil Terry. Check it out. I think now's a good time for a lot of people to look at something like this. Cool.
That's beautiful. awesome. Well, thanks a ton for the time, Joe. And if you have any more bug requests or anything like that,
I know where to find you. In the meantime, let's all drink good wine and keep our pools crystal clear and ready for a fun summer day.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Take care.